Last time I checked, it was downloaded 250,000 times on WordPress. We've built thousands of broker websites. We are the IDX vendor of more than 200 MLS providers in the US. We served around 13 or 14,000 real estate agents and brokers in the US and Canada. I believe it's much more up to date compared to CoreLogic.
How do you manage software developers not being one yourself?
The first client that we had was based on New York, and whatever he paid us, we worked multiple by 20 for him in order to make him satisfied. We thought that, okay, if we can satisfy this guy, we can respond to real estate market in the US. One reason for this can be dual agency, which is frowned upon in the US, but it's very common in Europe.
My guest today is the co-founder and CTO of a prop tech company, despite not being a software developer herself. She's also deeply involved in real estate MLS standards, and I'm pretty excited to have Giselle on the podcast right now because MLSs are a topic that's in the news, and a lot of people don't really know what they are, how they work, where they actually get data from. And this is Giselle. Her company is Realtyna. Giselle, what was your original vision for Realtyna? What was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Well, hello, Rick. First of all, hello to your audience. That's an interesting story because in 2007, me and my co-founder, we were living in Dubai. It was in the midst of, like, before the crisis, and the real estate was booming there, and we decided to create a website to list properties that were available in Dubai. And we searched all the plugins and softwares available, and we didn't find anything that, could respond to our needs. So we decided to develop our own software. And then the crisis hit. And also we realized that, we are more IT people rather than being in broker or agent side. We didn't have the set of skills basically to be able to sell real estate. So we thought that, okay, we had developed a rather good software that was a Joomla plugin at that time. Joomla was a big deal. So we started selling that plugin basically. It was called RPL, Real Estate Property Listing, something like that. Realtyna Property Listing, yeah. Taking it from there, we had clients from different parts of the world, obviously because we were outside of the US and, there is no MLS outside of the US. We had to have ad listing component to our plugin so people can add their basically listings. In the US, it's not necessary because all the listings come from the MLS. But in order to respond to international needs, we had added that component. And then we realized that, real estate is so complicated. It is very local, meaning that, every region, in the States or countries, every region, they have their own set of fields and requirements. So we worked a lot on that ad listing to make it flexible. So in any country, they can, add their own fields. They can remove fields, they can change the order of the fields, make them mandatory or optional, make them appear on the search widget on the website or not. So we worked a lot on that. We called it Flex add-on. It was a part of our core product. And that's how we got into international real estate market. And at the same time, we started providing service to US clients, which was very difficult because it's not easy to satisfy the level of service that people expect in the US. I remember the first client that we had was based on New York. We wanted to create their websites. And whatever he paid us, we worked multiple by 20 for him in order to make him satisfied. We thought that, okay, if we can satisfy this guy, we can respond to real estate market in the US. And that is how we got familiar with MLS and, all the ecosystem that is in the US. And fast forward today, we've built thousands of broker websites. We are the IDX vendor of more than 200 MLS providers in the US. We served I think, around 13 or 14,000 real estate agents and brokers in the US and Canada. And that's where we are today.
So this statistic on your website that's like 150,000 clients, is that clients of the realtors that you're serving? Is that realtor customers of Realtyna?
That number may not be accurate because we have a free plugin called WPL, which I didn't check recently, maybe over a year, but last time I checked, it was downloaded around 250,000 times
Gotcha.
on WordPress. We've had like around 16,000 paid clients, but 90% of our market is in US and Canada. And some of our clients, they're large brokers, and we have all the tools that they need to manage their brokerage, like having membership system. Different agents can interact with the website. They can have their own profile. They can have CRM. We build their public-facing website as well for lead capturing and all of that. So to be honest, I don't know the accurate number because, like, for example, one of our clients, they have 3,000 agents. So this 13 to 16,000 that I say is the number of licenses of our product or platform that we sold. But because it's the owned license and they can install it on their own web hosting or server, we don't have direct access to how they're using it.
So that one brokerage with 3,000 realtors, is that one license or 3,000 licenses?
One license.
Gotcha. So a much larger number of agents who are using this. So I want to ask you more questions about the business model, but to preface that, I think we should go to a little bit of basics. I think most of my audience has heard the term MLS. They've probably sold a property. They know that they listed their property on an MLS. In a little bit more detail, what exactly is an MLS?
An MLS is a combination of a software platform plus a set of rules and regulations that are imposed either by NAR, National Association of Realtors, or by the associations that run the MLS. So there are MLS organizations. There are different models of MLS organizations. Sometimes they are owned by realtor associations. Realtor is a trademark for NAR. So if you are a member of NAR, you can call yourself realtor. And if an association actually is somehow linked to NAR, they called realtor associations. So there are thousands of associations in the US itself. And some of these MLSs, they are broker owned. So some large brokerages, they join together and they create this software platform. And actually, according to the rules and regulations in the US, when you become a licensed agent or broker, you need to be a part of the MLS in order to have access to the MLS data. For adding, one of the rules is that if you get a house for sale, you have a contract, you have 24 to 48 hours to list it in the MLS. This is a rule. Or for example, if there are any updates or any changes in the listing data, the price is changed, the status is changed or whatever, you have like few hours to update the information on the MLS system. And this way, the MLS ensures that the data, it's a source of truth, basically. The data that is on the MLS is accurate and reliable. And then MLSs, they provide a data feed to large portals like Zillow and Redfin. So they are the source of data.
What is the incentive for a broker to contribute data to the MLS? Right? So it's basically like a database of listings that's managed by some local body that is probably affiliated with NAR. It has some rules about data usage. Let's say I'm a broker, right? I start a new brokerage. Why do I contribute listings to the MLS versus just posting them on my own website and selling them to the buyers that come to me?
There are several incentives. The first one is being that the mass syndication. As soon as you add a listing into the MLS, it gets full visibility. It will be synced to thousands of websites. Second factor is that within the MLS, agents basically they cooperate with each other from the buyer side and the seller side. So even an agent that is not affiliated to your brokerage or to you, but if they're a member of the MLS, they can bring a client for you. So this cooperation actually helps a lot for the sales process, for the selling side. The sales cycle happens much faster, and it's like under the MLS umbrella, everyone is protected. And the next one is that you will have access to historical data, which is very valuable when you want to list a property based on the history of what kinds of properties in that area are sold in the past like 12 months. What are the average prices? There are a lot of data. They call them market analysis, comparative market analysis. So you can determine what's the best price to put on this listing in this property, and when you add it to the database.
Gotcha. So basically, it helps me sell my listing. It puts it in front. I list a property for sale, gets it in front of more buyers. That's my incentive to basically contribute data, so that this reciprocity agreement. I can only get the market data if I contribute, and I also want to contribute because it gets my listings in front of more buyers.
That's actually it is sorry. It is in or out. If you're in, you're fully in. You cannot choose that I'm going to list this property, but this one I want to keep for myself, or list it in my inside circle, for example. That's illegal based on the MLS rules.
Gotcha.
So that is why everyone contributes and the system works perfectly.
So what is an office exclusive? How is it different from something that I don't contribute to the MLS?
Well, that I don't know. It's more like a brokerage term, but I guess it cannot be distributed like normal listings.
Gotcha. So what then is the incentive to put a property on the MLS as an office exclusive? Wouldn't I always want to get it in front of as many buyers as possible? And also, wouldn't that break the reciprocity agreement?
There are 400 or 500 MLSs in the US. So that depends, on which MLS you're affiliated with. That's more of a technical question. I'm not a realtor, so I don't honestly know the answer to that.
Gotcha. I've been sort of curious because I've only been involved in real estate from the investor side. And so, investors always talk about off-market deals. Oh, you need a good realtor who can get you access to off-market deals. But I've always been slightly confused as to, first of all, like why a seller would want to list something off-market, because, off-market means you don't list it on the MLS, or maybe you list it as an office exclusive, but somehow that doesn't get as much reach. It's like, why would a seller want to list something that doesn't get as much reach? And then also, doesn't that break the whole premise of the MLS? It's like you have to contribute the listing.
Yeah, there are a lot of a lot of cases. I don't know if you heard the term pocket listing.
Yeah.
These are the listings that actually the agents or brokers that they have those listings, they go against MLS rules and they don't add them. Sometimes the sellers basically they don't want that. They want a level of privacy, because when the listing goes on the MLS, it's everywhere. So maybe it's because of protecting, their privacy. They don't want, like, for example, their neighbors to know that they're selling their house. Or in certain neighborhoods, although it's against the fair house policy rules, maybe that's one of the reasons that they don't list them on MLS. I know that there were some cases between DOJ and NAR with regards to pocket listings. And although NAR wants to make it illegal, I'm not sure if it is illegal yet. So
Well, you said it is breaking the rule, though,
to the rule of MLS.
of the MLS, right? How common is that? How many brokers just are, sort of disregard the rules sometimes of the MLS?
I don't have any like statistics on that, but it's not uncommon, let's say.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I might have bought a pocket listing at one point. There's a brokerage that I work with that sends out emails that not too irregularly, they include a pocket listing, and it was a confusing thing. I'm like, why would you want to not sell your property for more?
Yeah, actually, one reason for this can be dual agency, which is frowned upon in the US, but it's very common in in Europe, and that's one of the reasons that we don't have an MLS in Europe. So, for example, a brokerage, they can like the office exclusive listings. Basically, it's because they want maybe they have a network of brokerage like offices, and they want to the brokerage wants to close the deal with two different agents that are working with that brokerage. So one agent, so this way they can get a percentage of both sides commission, you know.
Right. Makes sense. It's interesting, in 1920, the average commission in the US was about 2.5%. And that was split between buyer and seller agent. And then by like 1940s, it had gone up to 5+%. I have been interested about trying to compare to other countries of, this like single seller agent model, because it's sort of unique, right? If you go to buy a car, you don't have a buyer agent and a seller agent. You just have the person working for the seller. In most industries, you have this person who is working for the seller trying to, trying to sell your asset. I guess media is somewhat similar. You have media buying agencies which work on behalf of buyer, but that's for, large companies. In the consumer world, I can't really think of any other situation.
I think that's the buying a property is the biggest asset of a lifetime that like average people they invest in, and it really makes a difference. That's why I think it's a beautiful model to have a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. But the truth is that the fiduciary duty of the buyer's side representation or buyer's agents is not 100% aligned with their own interest.
Yeah.
Which is closing the deal at the highest rate, at the highest price, because they get the commission on the transaction price, basically. But the new model, the modern model that you refer to, is called offer of compensation, which is like the standard model right now that we have these lawsuits against. But that is actually a step up from the old model, which was the unilateral offer of sub-agency, that both agents, they worked for the seller and they split the commission between themselves. And there was a lot of cases that the buyers claimed that they were not aware of the fact that the second agents or the buyer's agent actually didn't represent them. They would call them buying agents rather than buyer's agent. So with the new model, they called buyer's agent, and they have actually fiduciary duty towards the buyer. But the justice system is still not happy with the current model.
It's interesting. So I know you're involved with the MLS on the international stage. You said, MLS is mostly a US thing. And in Europe, you're saying the prevailing model is you basically have one agent that just works with the seller. The seller, lists their property, and that same seller agent has to find their buyer. What is the push in Europe for MLSs? Is it seem inevitable to you that Europe will go to an MLS model? Or is it like, it would be nice if they did, but, hard to say because political pushback of all these existing brokers who want to take both sides of the transaction?
Well, I hope, I hope that it happens. And it's sort of my life's mission, basically, to see it in other parts of the world, because I think we can tackle this from the consumer's perspective. Because of lack of MLS right now, the data that resides on the portals are not reliable at all, and the consumers are confused. There's no benefit in for the sellers to sign exclusive representation or exclusive mandates. So they list a property with 5-6 different agencies, and all of them, they list that same property on the portals, sometimes with different prices, sometimes even with different sizes, but from the photos you see that it's the same property. And like if one of them manages to close the deal and they take off that announcement from the portals, the 5 others will stay there for quite a while, like for weeks, maybe even months, because those guys, they don't know that this property is not available anymore. But when the benefit of exclusive representation is that one agency or agent or broker basically is responsible for the accuracy of the data, and there is the MLS is the source of truth. So in this part of the world, if you want to buy a property, it's very difficult. It's the time consuming process. You have to contact numerous agents for numerous listings, and most of the times you don't hear back from them. So I think that the movement can start from the consumer side. And on the other side, to be honest, NAR Global, in the past decade, basically, they started educating real estate agents and brokers in the international level. There are a lot of realtors that are international, like working in different countries. So little by little, basically, the industry is also is getting a glance into the benefits of having an MLS system, because the most number of transactions happen in the US compared to other parts of the world. So at the end of the day, the MLS and the cooperation and the whole structure basically helps generating more business even for real estate professionals. We can see this by looking at the statistics. So it's obvious.
I like looking at things that seem inevitable in business or things that don't. And so looking at the US, it's right before NAR, there was some other industry organization and we had commission splits. And then now we have commission splits. And in the interim, we also mostly had commission splits, although it might have looked different. In Europe, do you think the reason why that really didn't evolve is because of regulations? Or do you think it's like, there are people moving from one country to another, and because Europe basically has all these state-sized nations, if you have someone moving from Oregon to Texas, they're both within the US, they're both gonna be potentially governed by NAR, but if they're moving from Germany to France, that's just a harder coordination to do between those two brokers. They're in different jurisdictions, their rules are different, and just orchestrating a common set of rules was more difficult. Do you think that is the reason? Or do you think that there is like some other pressure that kept that from developing for 100 years after the US had that?
Well, actually, in the recent event that we had in Paris, International MLS Forum, I discussed this. I had a presentation there exactly answering this question. Why? Because there has been a lot of MLS initiatives outside of the US, but most of them they failed or they don't grow beyond a certain limits. And my presentation was about why this is the case.
Perfect.
Some people say that,
Tell us
yeah,
that.
some people say that it's yeah, that was the perfect question. Some people say like it's a cultural difference or mindset difference. I don't believe that. Some people say that it's because of rules and regulations. Well, not that much, because still dual agency is not illegal in the States. So I think that the best chance or luck that they had in the US, you had in the US, is that MLSs were created before portals. So actually, they are the source of truth, and there is a good dynamic between MLSs and portals. Even portals pay to the MLS for having access to their feed, basically. But in this part of the world, the portals were created before MLS. They already have a network of agents and brokers and traffic of the consumers, and so they somehow they compete with the MLS. So when MLS is created, they are usually start small, but they don't have a feed to give to the portals, or even I know some cases that the MLS offered their feed to the portal, but portal rejected that because they see this as a competition. On the other side, portals, they don't have the jurisdiction or the power to impose exclusive mandates and updates, these types of things to their agents and brokers. So we can leverage that, because the truth is that the data on these portals in France, for example, I don't have the exact statistics, but I think 30 or 40% of the listings that you find in the most important portals, they are either outdated or fake, or they are already sold. In some other countries, it's 90%. Like it's impossible for an average person to find listings on the most important portals on those websites. So they're clickbait, like a listing that does not exist, and just they just want to get your information to sell something else to you. So we can leverage that basically. And traditionally in the US model, MLSs, they don't have a portal or a public facing portal basically, because they rely on portals and mass syndication for getting enough visibility for their listings. But in other parts of the world, basically, if new MLSs, they must have a portal, they must have mobile apps, very advanced tools, basically, to be able to offer to their agents and to the consumers. And when, as a consumer, when I know that this MLS website, maybe they have less listings, but I know that they're reliable. So these portals, they can start shifting the market basically. And in the end, our portals are great, but when you have enough power, then you can say, okay, here's my feed, I let you use my feed also on your website. And this is the way I think that we can leverage the current dynamics.
Yeah, I mean, a place that has 90% inaccurate listing, that seems like that's the country to start right there. What country is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, at that rate, it seems
Yeah.
useless. Like, how does that portal even still exist? Seems like they would have gone out of business from just
Well,
being like you look at Zillow's reviews on the App Store, and it has bad reviews for bad listings, and like you said, it's pulling data from the MLS. So presumably, if it's just like the 2-day lag or something between, this house went under contract. But if 90% was bad, I can't imagine anybody would still be using Zillow in the U.S. I guess if it's the only option though in
true.
Georgia.
Yeah, it's the only option. So I have people that they wanted to buy a property in Georgia, the country, and they didn't even bother to go to this website. They contact a real estate agent, and it takes months for them to find the right option.
What do you think about the trend in the U.S. of MLSs merging? Do you think this is a pressure? Like I know California is obviously a big player here trying to merge into a state level MLS, and they had the whole campaign a couple of years ago about, you should, as a realtor, have access to the same data that Zillow provides to consumers. I don't think most people realize just how many MLSs there are, like hundreds, like somewhere between 500 and 900 in the US, I think. And so it's just this like patchwork of MLSs all over the country, and some of them overlap. And so it's like, oh, if you're in this area and there's a listing right on the edge here, but there's also an overlapping MLS, then you may only have MLS membership here, but the listing is in this one. And so even though there's a property listed in your area, you may not see it, but it's on Zillow because Zillow has both MLSs. So then the consumer sees it and the realtor doesn't see it. And then the consumer says, why aren't you showing me this property? So, California had this whole big push trying to merge their MLSs. And I think, there's other examples in recent years of MLSs merging. What's to prevent a national MLS, right? Like why it seems like we should have just one MLS, or at least a state level. That seems like the natural thing. Have you, participating in the industry, do you see like what are the common pushbacks against this?
Well, I think it's inevitable in the end. I don't know when, but MLSs are costly to run, and agents sometimes, as you mentioned, they need to be a member of 2, 3 different MLSs to be able to have full coverage in their area. And so recently, some of them started merging because of the economic reasons, and of course, the member benefit. Also, there are some cooperation between MLSs, so they sign data share agreements. Even between competing MLSs, they accept that they can share the data. So, for example, one thing I know that, for example, I guess Stellar MLS, which is a big MLS in Florida, basically they have a data exchange agreement with FMLS. They have like overlapping areas, but for example, if an agent has access to Stellar MLS, they can have the feed of FMLS as well.
Right. You think that's inevitable that we'll go to a national scale, or do you think it'll just go to state level, and then I guess in principle you might have state level differences of real estate law that may make it less feasible to merge across state lines?
That's a good question. Basically, here we have to talk about RESO, Real Estate Standard Organization, which came to play very actively 10 years ago, but they existed, I think, from 20 years ago. They helped a lot because this industry was so fragmented, and each MLS, they used a different set of data fields or terms basically to call the same feature in a property.
Can you give a concrete
And
example?
well, I don't have anything specific in mind, but what I know that altogether, RISO came up with RISO data dictionary. Basically, right now, there is a standard. It consists of, I think, 3,000 around, if I'm not wrong, 3,000 fields recognized by RISO, but there are more than 30,000 fields being used in the industry level. So, and a lot of them, they're similar things. For example, calling a road, for example, or I don't know what you call road in some other parts of the world, parts of the US or in other
Road or
states. I don't
street
know.
or highway
I
or
don't have any yeah, things like that. So they did a brilliant job to bring all of these MLSs basically together, and they work in different work groups, and they came up with this standard set of fields, and whatever that was really the same thing, same object basically, or the same thing, they agreed to use the same terms. And of course, there are some terms that are really local. For example, proximity to what is that? Proximity to in Hawaii, there is proximity to what is that erupts?
a volcano. I don't know the name of
A
it.
volcano,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, proximity to volcano. That is very specific for Hawaii, for example. So
Right.
they can have that field as a local field, besides the RISO standard like data dictionary. RISO allows that. So that's maybe one of the reasons that we are a little bit still away from having a national MLS, unless we take all of these as a part of the standard language,
Right,
basically.
which would be a mess,
So
30,000 fields. Yikes.
yeah,
Especially if a lot of them are redundant, like just different names for the same thing, calling a street a highway.
yeah, exactly.
How far has RESO penetrated into the market? Like, how many MLSs have adopted RESO?
I think all of the NAR MLSs, they have adopted RISO because it was a rule. Still, even RISO has gone beyond the borders. In Canada, for example, they had their own national standard, and a few years ago they decided to like change their standard and use RISO instead because of a lot of advantages that using a universal standard brings to the market, both for consumers and for the portals, for the tech companies, prop tech companies, of course. So if you look at map of resource penetration, there are a lot of other countries in South America. There are quite a few countries in Europe also. For example, we helped the MLS in Romania to get certified recently. They use FlexMLS as their platform, and actually FlexMLS helped a lot to get them certified as well. So RISO is now a universal standard, not a US standard.
That's awesome. And that probably makes your job a lot easier pulling in listings from a common API interface instead of a, you know,
Yes,
hundreds of different sets of fields.
absolutely. Yeah. It was a very heavy duty job for our clients. Sometimes they had two, three different feeds from different MLSs, and we had to do different types of data mappings for each of these feeds. And sometimes an MLS decided to, for example, change a field all of a sudden out of nowhere, and we had to, change the mappings on like 100 different websites that they were using that. So now it's just they all use RISO, and when there is an upgrade, we know that it's for everyone. And we manage actually to create a unified feed of all of the MLSs that we work with as well. So in Realtyna, we have a unified feed of 200 different MLS providers, and depending on which MLS you're allowed to have access to, we can provide you with that one. It's API, and the data will be available to you.
How many MLSs do you guys work with?
200. It's almost 95% coverage in the US. So
have you gotten any pushback being on the tech side of the company, right? You basically are helping brokers to publish their listings online. Obviously, in the early years, Zillow got a lot of flack for putting MLS data online. A lot of realtors were unhappy with that. Still, some are unhappy with that. Have you guys as a company, I mean, you guys are not a portal, so you're helping realtors and brokers themselves to publish this data, but have you had MLSs that were hesitant to work with you because you were pushing that data online, or have they all been pretty...
No, not at all. No, actually, we have a contract with all of them, and we are responsible to make sure that the MLS compliance rules are respected on the websites of our clients. So we take care of their data, and we make sure that only those who are allowed to have access to that data will have access to it. Like each client that approaches us, each agent or broker to have access, we sign a different contract with them and the MLS. We inform the MLS that this client is there, and there are some checks and processes in place to make sure that the right people have access to the data.
Can you give some examples of what these data compliance rules are? Again, I think this is an area that most people are probably completely unfamiliar with, right? What are the data access policies that govern how a broker can use the MLS data? Like, can I just, as a broker, take all the data from the MLS, right? I'm subscribed to Stellar MLS. Can I just take all the data from Stellar MLS and throw it on my website? Or am I only allowed to take specific fields? How does this work?
There are some restrictions on, for example, closed listings. Maybe you cannot show them publicly. That also depends on the MLS. It's different from MLS to MLS. But for the compliance rules, there are some standard ones. Like, for example, you have to display the name of the listing agent and listing office in the listing details page, although they may be your competitor. When you show the listing details, you need to display their name. And for example, some MLSs, they said that it cannot be shown with a smaller font size of the other information on that website. It should be visible. You cannot show it gray, like in a way that is not visible. The other one, which is very important, is that your data needs to be up to date. Like the frequency of getting updates from the MLS. You cannot, like, if a price changed or a status changed, you cannot wait 24 hours basically to replicate that on your website. So that is where, like, having the APIs or the data distribution technology is very important, because the data is sort of live. Maximum, I think 2-3 hours is accepted.
Have you seen, customers that come to you? Are they typically coming to you after having already tried something else and they, had an issue with it? Or do they, it's like a new brokerage that's just set up and they come to you?
Well, obviously we had both cases, but we are one of the first companies that we introduced the concept of organic MLS integration to the market, compared to the old method that was iframe. Like if you wanted to display IDX data on your website, it was just an iframe from the tech perspective.
Explain real quick what IDX is.
IDX is Internet Data Exchange, stands for Internet Data Exchange, and it's sort of the compliance or the policies around the MLS data. So when we say IDX feed, basically is the MLS feed that is governed by the IDX rules and regulations. It's hear this, usually you hear that IDX feed.
Gotcha.
So before, 15 years ago, most of the websites, they used iframe, which basically doesn't bring any SEO advantages to your website. Brokers were spending money on advertisement and things like that, but actually the juice of the SEO was going to the IDX providers because it was just an iframe.
Right.
And then after that, some of the data transport protocols was we were using FTP even for getting the feed, which was very difficult to manage and keep the like connection alive. And then RESO introduced RETS, real estate transaction standard, which was a step up from the all other things. And at the time of RETS, we introduced organic MLS integration, which actually synced the data from the MLS database to the database of these secondary websites, basically. And that was also a very difficult process. And it was like RETS was non-standard, so it was very difficult to like to train technical people to use RETS. And then they moved to RESO Web API, which is the API, RESTful API based on OData standard. And now it's like it's much easier to find resources to be able to use to use this kind of API, and it's being used for data sync. It's very reliable. And also we have recently developed that we think that it's a next stage for RESO Web API. In Realtyna, we developed RESO Web API on the fly. We call it on the fly or on demand, which is basically you can have a shell, a very light shell for a website like WordPress or whatever, and use this API to have access to the MLS data. You don't need to sync the data. So it's really fast, and the response time is in milliseconds. So nobody realizes that this data does not reside on the server. We use CDN and all the other technologies to make sure that this is responsive enough to bring a lot of SEO value and accessibility to the websites that are using it.
Do you allow brokers to add other layers onto the data? I think you guys are pulling the map from Google Maps, right? And you pull the listings from the MLS, you overlay those listings, but like crime data is very important, at least as an investor. I am always looking at crime data, but Zillow doesn't show crime on the map. I haven't seen a broker's website that shows crime on the map. Is that something that is like, violates one of the standards of MLS? Like you can't show that data?
No, actually, there are websites that are using that data. That data comes from census, basically. So all sorts of like maiden income, crime data, whatever, you can have them. No, it's not against the MLS rules. But there are certain rules, for example, for automatic estimation tools. If you have the data and you want to process it, some of the MLS contracts, they clearly mention that you cannot use this data to use automatic estimation tools like Zestimate or things like that. I don't know the reason behind it. Maybe they don't want to create some sort of because estimations are not easy, and that can create like problems.
Do you know, does Zillow have special licensing agreements to be able to do that? Or does it just use, different data to make those estimates?
Well, in the beginning, their tool was very inaccurate. So there was a lot of issues around that. I think that's why it's a part of MLS rules that you cannot do that. But maybe they had the contract before this was restricted. So Zillow is Zillow. They are powerful enough to do whatever they want.
I mean, I would think the MLSs would be the ones that could still, if they wanted to, they could still kind of stick it to Zillow. I mean, if they wanted to prevent Zillow from using the data to calculate its estimate, then I mean, Zillow has to get that data somehow. So they wouldn't really have it, especially if it was a big MLS, like the big one in California or Stellar MLS, something like that. Like, what do you think are the
Yeah,
open?
but they cooperate with each other. So I don't think that they want to push that so too hard.
Right. Do vendors, like, let's say, you want to start a new portal. Does Zillow only get access because I think they own brokerage subsidiaries that they get access through? Or are there vendors that set up portals that are not brokers, but just have, data licensing agreements to get that data and show it?
There are two types of access to MLS data. One is publisher's license, which, for example, List Hub, they have that, and you can have a nationwide feed through List Hub. But they have also their own set of rules and regulations. For example, you cannot have access to List Hub feed if you're an agent or broker. So it's a publisher's feed, and therefore you have some. I think there are some other arrangements with List Hub that, for example, if you're displaying it, you need to give us feedback, like if there are leads, for example, generated from these listings, you need to piggyback that to us, or there are some restrictions on that. So, and the second one is the access for the brokerages, basically. So Zillow was using List Hub feed in the beginning, and not all of the listings on MLS data are accessible in publishers data, because when you add the listing into MLS, you can choose that whether you want this to be accessible to publishers or not. So I know that their feed is not 100% complete. It doesn't have full coverage. And the second method is, of course, you have if you have a brokerage license in all the states and join the MLSs, you can have access. So that's the Zillow model right now.
Is there a reason that more brokers don't publish larger feeds? Like, why, right? If I start a brokerage, why don't I just get an MLS membership throughout the state of Florida, and then I'll get more SEO? The customers who live in Orlando who are searching and might move to my area, they'll come across my website. Is the cost of membership just prohibitively high in an MLS?
Well, the cost is not that much for a brokerage, basically, to prevent them from this option. But I think the technical part is more difficult to have feed from different MLSs. Of course, there are a lot of our clients that they're already doing this. But over the years, we try to make this technology more accessible to our clients, because we were more, at the moment, we have an MLS platform as well. So if you want to build the MLS outside of the States, of course, inside the States, they already have a platform through CoreLogic and Black Knight and, different systems. But outside of the States, if an association wants to create MLS, we have the platform for that. But we come from the consumer side. So because of that, we worked a lot on the data transport and distribution technology to make it more accessible to average agent and broker, make it easier and more cost effective, basically. So this Reso Web API on the fly makes that possible. But just imagine before that, that we used Reso Web API only for data sync. You had to have very powerful hosting with powerful database to be able to sync the data of like 3 different MLSs, 150,000 listings, and receive the updates all the time. It needs a lot of investment technically to be able to keep up that infrastructure and according to the MLS compliance rules. But now with this Reso Web API on the fly, if you're a member of 3 MLSs, for us it's just 3 options that we enable on your feed, and you don't need to sync anything. You can just send us the query and you receive the listings in a blink of an eye.
That's awesome. Taking over CoreLogic's monopoly in the US and pursuing that abroad, that's a great business strategy. If you can wedge your way in there, FlexMLS is an amazing business.
Yeah, actually, one of the advantages that we have is that we have clients from 96 countries. So we know a lot of their pain points. And at the same time, we worked on the multi-language. Realtyna was the first MLS platform that got certified for Reso multi-language standard. CoreLogic, they don't support multi-language, I guess. Last thing that I knew. So of course, they have their market in the US and Canada, but internationally, you need a lot more things. And I mean, our platform is completely based on cloud and APIs, and I believe it's much more up to date compared to CoreLogic.
What is your core business model? You said WPL, free WordPress plugin. You have WPL Pro, which is like $200 one-time license. Then presumably you guys have like a recurring charge for managing the database, providing that real-time feed, all those updates. How much do you guys charge for that? And do you bill it, based on how many MLSs this person is subscribed to, or total number of listing updates?
Well, when you purchase any of our products, it's a lifetime license, and we periodically release updates, and you can receive those updates automatically on your WordPress plugin, basically, and all of the other add-ons that we have. And it's optional to renew your support coverage. It's $199 per year. So if you want to contact our support people to check something, that there's something wrong on your website, to check that, or of course we have a very well defined support coverage as well, that what issues are related to us and we take care of it, or what issues are not related to us, because of course it's very difficult when the software is installed on-premise hosting and the client has admin access to it. If they break something, we can't be responsible for that. So for the MLS data, it's a monthly fee to have access to the data, and it also includes any updates that occur from the MLS side.
And what's that charge?
Each MLS has a different.
Is it just you pass through the MLS charge directly, no add-on for what you guys are doing, or?
That is a part. We each MLS is different. Like some MLSs, they charge us per client. Some of them they charge us like a flat fee. Some of them it's like a progressive fee, like from 1 to 100 clients you pay this much, and from the 101 and to 500 you pay this much. It's very different. So like the accounting system setting that we set up for dealing with all of these MLSs is really, it was a huge headache basically. But we try to keep it simple for our clients, so it's $99 per month.
Is that per month no matter how many MLSs you're in, or per MLS?
No, per MLS. If you want 3 MLS, of course, yeah.
Have you ever had a client that took off like Redfin, and that's a huge amount of traffic? I'd imagine you're losing quite a bit of money if you're serving that at $99 a month.
We have some large scale clients, but I'm not sure if I have the liberty to share that. Like a lot of websites that you see out there in the background, they run on our platform, but I'm not sure if we can share
That's fair.
them or not. Yeah.
That's a great deal, though. I mean, that seems, $99, and that takes care of all your headache for the MLS. That's awesome. I'm curious,
Yeah.
what opportunities do you see in the real estate landscape? If I'm an investor or looking for new startups to invest in, or if I'm an entrepreneur looking to start a startup, what do you think are the open spaces that are still not solved, either in the MLS ecosystem, or vendor tools, or anywhere in there? Where do you think the industry is going? What do you think the big opportunities are going to be?
Well, that's, I think, everyone's answer these days is the same. It's the AI.
Let's dig into that. How do you think AI is going to be implemented? Where in the chain does it get inserted, and how does it add value?
Well, for the starters, when adding a listing, for example, it's a time-consuming process to add, all the details of a property. There are a lot of features. I said like 3,000 fields, and most of them they are not completed by the agent who's entering the listing, because it's a difficult job. So, for example, AI can help fill that gap by processing the images through image processing, and realizing that, for example, this is the type of flooring, this is the type of walls or the windows, or all of that. That actually help adding the listings more accurately in the system. And actually, we're partnering with an AI company called SteelDot to add that to ad listing process. Basically,
Does
they're
that come with
funded by.
does that come with liability issues? I think in Florida law, if you list something incorrectly in the MLS, like, you have potential liability for that. So, I mean, AI is pretty good, but it also hallucinates things. If you hallucinate a field, what's the repercussions of that? Are you gonna indemnify the people, the brokers that use your system, or?
Actually, they can. The AI can just list all of those fields, and you can look at them, and the ones that are not right, you can just check them off. Of course, a human interaction is needed in the next step. But it lifts a lot of thinking and guessing from the agent's shoulder.
Makes sense. Okay, so I want to wrap up with a question that's a little bit different. You are not a software developer. You obviously know a lot about software. You are the CTO of a prop tech company. How do you manage engineers, software developers, not being one yourself? How do you make sure that you're hiring someone who's competent in the area that you need without understanding that area? How do you oversee this team and set a vision and a direction in terms of what technology to use without being in the weeds of knowing how to operate that?
Yeah. Actually, I have an engineering background myself, electronics engineering in control systems. So I'm not far from that. I started going through IT to IT business by first going to for managing networks. I was a network administrator as my first job, and then I moved into business, and from there I got interested in software for sure, and I can read the code, of course, but my brain is very wired for algorithms. And also along the way I learned a lot about databases. So my process is that we have a business idea, we start analyzing that idea, we start developing like a database models for it, which database technology we need to use for this microservice, for example. And we model the database, and then we go through the algorithm. So my brain is very good wired for that. So
You're basically a software engineer.
yeah, so yeah, I work with them on the algorithm, and then again we go back, we revise the database to make sure that everything is like according to what we need. For example, the ins and outs of the program, the inputs and outputs of the program, what it should be, and if it should be related to other microservices. We are on AWS, so we use event bridge, for example, how it needs to be bridged to other, or what kinds of layers we have to use. So I'm involved in all of that, and then our developers, they develop it based on that. And of course, then after that, there are tests and different DevOps environments, basically.
So your LinkedIn is just basically marketing to the business people. You're like, oh, I'm not a software developer. Don't worry, I'm a normal business person. But really, you are a software developer. You just hide that from the rest of the people so they're not put off.
I don't know. I mean, that's the truth. I don't write the codes. When I was a kid, I was writing Basic and Pascal and those old languages. So I fell in love with computer science when I was 13. I had my first computer.
I think that makes you a
So
software developer. Maybe you're a little bit out of date now because you're not even been practicing, but it certainly is the proper background for then managing a technical team.
true. Yeah, maybe, but I don't consider myself like, I love to be able to write codes. I'm fascinated by that, but it's because I don't develop them myself, I don't call myself a developer.
Well, I think if you were motivated, you could probably figure it out pretty fast, but it sounds like you have too much going on to be able to focus on that. If you had to restart your company and do something new in the prop tech space, what would it be?
The same thing that I'm doing now.
Well, Realtyna already exists, right? It already is a thing. So you'd have to build a competitor to Realtyna or something else. Would you build a competitor and build it better than Realtyna, or would you build something adjacent?
Well, we've already built a competitor to Realtyna, but it belongs to Realtyna.
Oh,
So a
what?
part of it that this, yes. So it's a we call it Realty Feed. It's a platform that is 100% on AWS cloud, and basically when we started developing this 5 years ago, and of course we made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know anything about cloud and lambda functions, so we made a lot of mistakes and we changed things. But it's a cloud platform that we can build MLSs very fast in a cost effective way. It's very dynamic in the sense that, depending on the locale, you can have multiple languages, you can have your own data structure, of course, based on RISO. We separated the standard fields and the local fields. So I've been working on that in the past 4 or 5 years. That was my full focus on that. So whatever exists in Realtyna, I don't have any idea what's happening there. Another team is taking care of that. That part of like whatever you see in our shop page on Realtyna, it's managed right now by another team. So I've been developing this cloud infrastructure that now our MLS, like Resolve Web API on the fly, and we call it MLS router, basically, the products, and the MLS platform, all of that.
MLS router is the same as Realty Feed or different?
MLS router runs on Realty Feed. So Realty Feed is a platform, like we have 300 plus Lambda functions, 10, 15 different microservices.
And what is it, right? Like, what is the Realty Feed product?
It's not a product, it's a platform.
Okay, so what is it as?
So it was built to be a social network of real estate. So in normal social networks, you have people, users, and you have groups. But on Realty Feed, we have users, groups, and properties, listings, basically, as native entities. And with all the information that we had from the industry, we thought about all the different main entities in the real estate ecosystem. Like, for example, if you're a association, if you're a MLS, we consider it as a group. Also, if you have a brokerage office, that's also a group. So these are the core entities in that. So that is how we can build MLSs. The system is like people can come subscribe on Realty Fit platform. They can create their brokerage group. They can invite their agents to that group. So they have a group and some set of group functions. And then if we build MLS, the MLSs, they can have membership packages to them, depending on individual or brokerage, different types of models. And the brokerage, then they can join the MLS. The MLS can approve that or rejects that. And the moment that they are a part of the MLS, when they add a listing in the brokerage, they can submit it to the MLS. So it's this hierarchical structure for implementing the whole ecosystem there, from the agents, normal users, and then these MLSs, they can have their own data feed as well for creating front public facing portals, basically based on React or Wordpress or whatever, because it's API based. It's really responsive and fast.
And is this only for international markets? Like if I'm, a US broker and I'm already connected to an MLS and that MLS runs on, FlexMLS, CoreLogic, do I use this for anything, or does it not really apply to me? It only applies in areas where you set this up as the base level MLS, and then, a broker can join that and sort of participate in this social database.
For US clients, because the MLSs, they already exist, we have their data as a IDX provider, so they can sign up and they can request to have access to from the platform itself. They can basically go through the purchase process. They request to have access to this feed of this MLS and that MLS, and then there is a like workflow behind the scenes for signing, because again, each MLS is different how they approve access to the data. So we go through the back office procedures to get them approved, and then they will have their API key and all the technical things that they require, and they can start using it on their website.
And what do they get from that over just using your first gen product? Let's say I'm a Florida broker. I'm in Stellar MLS. I get my listings from there. I show them on my website, right? What do I get from Realty Feed that I don't already get from the old Realtyna connecting to Stellar MLS?
Well, first of all, you don't need to have very advanced and expensive hosting, because you don't need to sync the data. The data is on demand, and it's indexable also by Google. So it has the best SEO ranking as well. Like if you compare the Google Insight analytics of the pages that are built based on this API, MLS Router API, and Zillow, for example, or other the best portals out there, there's a huge difference from like ours is much faster, is much more accessible, and it's get full SEO ranking compared to these portals. So you're all set, very cost effective, no headache for implementation. It's super fast and
Interesting. So it's like a data store. Do I still have a website, or how does this work?
yeah.
In terms of like full indexing, is it just the back end, and then I pull that into a component?
It's an API. It's an API, and you query that API.
Gotcha. Okay, so I basically have my like page structure set up, and then on the back end, you're sort of my content management system accessible via an API call. So yeah, I have whatever property listing I call, and I just populate that.
Yeah, you can have search widgets, and that search widgets basically, whatever the way you set it up actually translates that search criteria to the ResoWeb API model and queries our server, and the response is instantaneous. So that's how it works. It's up to you how you want to set up the front end. You can have a WordPress website or a React website or any other front-end technology, basically. You just need to set up a search widget that actually knows how to talk to ResoWeb API. Also, you can build mobile apps also based on this because it's so fast that it's accessible for mobile apps as well.
And is it so fast just for pulling a listing page, or also if I want to like show a map like Zillow with all my listings on there?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
How do you beat Zillow on that, like performance wise? Because I think Zillow also uses Google Maps, right? So presumably that's your biggest layer that has to load, or do the listings take longer to load than the map?
Actually, no, but the map layer also is optional. You can use another map technology.
So do you use something like OpenStreetMap or something?
Yes, because some of our clients, they find Google Maps expensive, and because it's on their website, actually they have to get the API key themselves and pay to Google themselves. It's not on us. So they have the option to use Bing or OpenStreetMaps. It's up to them.
Is OpenStreetMap faster to use than Google Map?
No, it's not faster. The best one is Google Maps, hands down. Yeah.
So how do you beat Zillow though? Because then Zillow is using Google Maps, right? Like everybody, I think, is at some point, if you use Zillow enough, you have the experience of like you pull up a page and you're moving around and the map is lagging on one side. I assumed that was primarily the map data that was slowing that down, not the listings data.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, of course, Zillow was built like they all the time they're updating their technology, but the technology changes so fast that for these big portals, it's not that easy to keep up. Change is very costly for them. So we worked a lot, like to be viable in this market and to somehow democratize the access to MLS data because of course a lot of people they go to Zillow for searching for properties, but then brokers spend money on advertising, be it like Google Maps advertisement, Google advertisements, or like other campaigns, and they want to list their website and they want their website to be fast, so people go back to that, and they want to sometimes we can pull up the listings that belong to that office and show them as featured listings, based on the MLS data. So they can, put some more visibility on their own listings, and maybe they don't like to be adjacent to their competitors in Zillow or spend their money on Zillow. And these things actually, the SEO ranking builds up over time because they have also hyper local focus. The SEO algorithms actually put more score for hyperlocal websites.
Interesting. So what's the best tech stack now, right? If I want to start a brokerage, I want to use your products to create the fastest map possible and get as much SEO as possible. Do I use WPL Pro? Do I use Realty Feed? Do I use, the MLS router on top of that? Do I use them in combination or just a subset? What's the, if I want to I want to be Redfin, right? I want to be as fast as possible. I have grand ambitions of being huge. What's the tech stack?
Yeah, that would be definitely MLS router because you can, add the feeds one by one. It's just for us, it's just a click to make that feed available when we are allowed to by the MLS, basically. So you don't need to work any more to add that extra feed to your website. It's just like a click for us. And then, of course, front end technologies, the best of them right now are Next.js or React. So you need to have something tailor made to your needs, and to be fast enough to get full score from search engines, basically.
And what's the best SEO strategy that you see? Do I have a page for every listing or a page for a subset of listings that match a criteria? Do I focus on the maps? What's the strategy there?
Basically, each listing gets indexed individually, but that depends on your market. Like some of the brokerages, they list listings based on school districts, for example. Some of them, they list them based on the cities. Maybe you want to list them based on the property type, for example, luxury properties. That depends on your strategy. And on top of that, a good website, it's not only a like listing website. You should differentiate yourself from obviously portals like Zillow by providing local information. So like a set of articles or blog posts about the area that you're active, providing more information actually makes people want to go back to your website. It should be continuous, make like your website more viable for people comparing to Zillow, for example. I want to know if this listing is located in this neighborhood. What are the cool things about it? What are the highlights about this neighborhood? What should I know? Tips, for example, things like that.
I'm glad I asked that question. That was a super interesting side note there into Realty Feed and all the stuff you could do with that. Thank you so much for making the time to
Thank you.
come on. It's been super fun to chat with you.
Sure. Thank you for having me.